Hi, my name is Julian Castro, and the news article I will be covering is called This Ohio County Banned Wind and Solar. Now residents are pushing back. So first, I will be covering the legislation that allows this ban to happen in the first place. And for the state of Ohio, there is the Ohio Power Siting Board, which has the general authority over all electricity generation projects. However, in 2021, Senate Bill 52 was passed, which gave individual counties the power to apply solar and wind blanket bans. And these bans could apply to the entire county at once or just specific parts of it like townships. Counties can also implement bans on case-by-case basis before they even reach the siting board. So a big part of this legislation is that it kind of undermines the Ohio Power Siting Board. And for the opponents of the ban, which are currently in the process of trying to get their block implemented, only had 30 days from the signing of SB 52 to collect enough signatures. Since this situation is effectively an energy controversy, I'll be covering both sides of it. So for the proponents of the ban, um, it was obviously implemented by the county commissioner. However, he decided to defer to the townships themselves. And the ban only applied to townships that voted for it, which ended up being 11 out of the 18 townships in the county. Kind of a big supporting point for the ban was that the commissioner saw this as a compromise, and the ban would only apply to the townships that supported it. A big reason that these townships that did support it was because the majority of their population are farmers. And also from the point of view from the county commissioner, they would prefer to have their own farmland used for their own crops instead of these massive solar and wind farms. It was started by Sharon Township, and many similar policies like this one are being pushed by fossil fuel linked groups, specifically in the state of Ohio. And a big reason for this is kind of the federal government's stance, which is also supportive of these big renewable energy bans. Off to the right, I've included a picture of a wind farm just to show kind of how big the footprint of it is and the impact it would have on the farmland of the county. So for the opponents of the ban, these farmers can supplement their income massively by leasing out their land to these companies. Obviously, it would not be a single payment to be able to use their land. They would be able to profit from this over time. Similarly, the economies could benefit massively from all of the tax revenue that these projects would bring in. And this was a major point of the news article, is that SB 52 allows the legislation to be passed solely by county commissioner. So even though in this case he deferred to the townships themselves, the legislation puts a ton of power in the hands of these county commissioners and the smaller groups of people who kind of are in charge of these counties. And it overlooks a lot of the constituents of these townships, a lot of whom would be able to benefit in the off season when their crops aren't being harvested. A counterpoint to the argument that all the farmers would like to keep using their farmland for their crops is that a lot of these crops are ethanol crops for fuel and not actual food that the people can benefit from directly. And then finally, large wind and solar projects would provide a ton of job opportunities and help support the local unions, which are hugely important in rural counties like this one. Tying this back into the course, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's pretty obviously an energy controversy. So it kind of has two sides to it, as well as having a lot of different impacts, like financially and economically for these people. Energy democracy is where um, energy that has an impact on a group of people is decided on democratically by the group of people, which is what the opponents of the ban are trying to push. They want to have more power and more say in renewable energy projects like this that could benefit or hurt a lot of people in their county. Power density is also a big one. Like I mentioned before, these solar and wind farms have a huge kind of footprint, and so they have a very low power density and require a lot of land. And finally is the not in my backyard concept, which I believe can be a huge source of a lot of the skepticism and lead to a lot of support for bans like this, where people can be supportive of renewable energy, but as soon as it has to do with their own property, they tend to be more skeptical and um, want to ban it initially. And that's the presentation. So thank you.